This is how you could save your fantasy football team. Moves that you need to make in fantasy football this week. We'll start with Ashton Jeanty. When you're looking at the updated overall rankings over on the Flock site for the expert average rest of season, which you can get, by the way, for free, link in the pinned comment, we've got Ashton Jeanty at number 20. He's around guys like Josh Jacobs. He's around guys like Drake London, Derrick Henry, Brock Bowers, and Trey McBride are here. Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Emeka Ibuka, T-Mac. In my opinion, Ashton Jeanty is valued at the bottom of where he probably should be valued. I think it's an acceptable range to value Ashton Jeanty. He's the running back 11. And again, the other QBs, tight ends, and wide receivers around there, I would rather have Ashton Jeanty than these guys. And after the first couple weeks, you would think this was crazy. When we're looking at that backfield in Las Vegas, this first of all, the snap shares there, I mean, Ashton Jeanty is getting every single touch in that offense. When you're looking at the overall percentage of snaps so far for Jeanty this season, he started there really around 85%, went down almost to 50%, went slightly up to like 60% in week 3, and then back up where he started in week 4. And so Jeanty, his playing time has kind of come back to where we saw it start. 85% of the snaps in week 1, and then this week 84% of the snaps. And so with Jeanty getting that elite usage and him finally kind of breaking out as a runner, because we did know that Ashton Jeanty was this talent. This guy was a running back picked in the top 10 of the NFL draft. That doesn't happen that often. It only really happens for prospects that are super mega ultra elite. And Ashton Jeanty was that guy. Not to mention, I don't know if you noticed, but Ashton Jeanty was standing straight up in the backfield this last week. Just like Michael Myers from Halloween. And when he's standing like Michael Myers from Halloween, you know he's about to score you a bunch of fantasy points. And this week he did just that. 17.8 fantasy points on the ground, 33.5 total, 15.5 from the air. Now, the 15 is not going to come every week because he only had 2 targets. The fact of the matter is he had 2 touchdowns. And so what you're looking at here is even if he doesn't score those touchdowns from in the air, he still has 18 points. And realistically, this game against the Bears was kind of a decent matchup for him, and I don't think it's going to be that favorable every week. But I do think this. Ashton Jeanty is still an elite talent. We drafted him where we drafted him because we knew that what he was capable of. And even though he didn't showcase that in the first 3 weeks, you can attribute that to him being a rookie running back. Historically, again, you can look at rookie running backs in their first couple weeks in the NFL, and they pretty much always get off to slow starts. And then what happens? They typically, from weeks 3 or 4 to the end, win you leagues. And Jeanty, I don't think, is an exception to that rule. He's going to get every valuable touch in that offense. It's not a great offense, but it's also not an offense that's just going to be out of games. It's also not an offense that is necessarily going to trail every game. The Raiders are competent. They're competently coached. They have a competent quarterback, and I think they're going to be in games where the game script is also competent in terms of Ashton Jeanty's role in that, where they could still be running the ball. Not to mention, he does get a little bit of receiving work here. It's not as much as we want to see. He only has 8 targets on the season. But the attempts, and at the point where he starts becoming super mega efficient, like 6.57 yards per carry like he had against Chicago, I mean, he's got a good schedule coming up as well. Week 5 against Indianapolis, Week 6 against Tennessee, and then he has Kansas City before the bye. Obviously, that stuff, but his next 2 weeks are going to be great matchups. So for me, I think Ashton Jeanty is I think he's a buy. If you can buy him anywhere, he's a buy. He's a hold if you have him, but I think I would label him as a buy. I was never really super worried about Ashton Jeanty in the sense that I was hoping that it would come sooner than later, and now I've kind of seen his breakout, and I think it's going to continue.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. I'm hold with him because I think most people have adjusted, and I think you're right. If someone in your league has not adjusted and is trying to sell high, quote unquote, on Jeanty after a big day, I would go ahead and capitalize. Did you notice they're letting him stand in the backfield again?
I literally just looked at you and said that five seconds ago. I looked at you and I said that, Nathan.
So now it's my turn.
You said yes. I did notice that.
Yeah,
I did notice that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with everything about his outlook over the next couple of weeks. I think he's going to be able to continue this stretch very similar to Hampton because of, Indy, he's going to have a good game against Indy. So his price will only go up from here on out. I think another guy that kind of has an interesting situation right now is Emeka Ibuka because we've talked about Chris Godwin, honestly, as a buy because of the target volume that he got 10 targets in his first game back from that rough injury that he had last season. But Ibuka has another day where he has a touchdown or 2. Did he have a couple of touchdowns touchdowns. He had like 20 points. He had a touchdown on 10 targets.
Touchdown.
He had that big play that kind of salvaged his day. Honestly, that was a good 70% of his production on the day. But again, the target volume was there with no Mike Evans. But this is kind of a situation that I think is going to get muddled over the next couple of weeks as Evans is trending to come back healthy, and Godwin obviously is going to get increased work opportunity, etc. And you're going to have a pretty crowded wide receiver room there. So, I mean, the proof is in the pudding with Igbuka as the talent, as a really, really high level talent wide receiver in that offense, paired with Baker Mayfield, who's going to provide plenty of volume there for him to produce 23, 12, 14, and 20 points in the first 4 weeks of the season. Right now, when you're looking at the expert consensus rankings and where he's going, again, I care more about the price than anything else. He's wide receiver 13, right behind London, Wilson, and Adams, and he's right ahead of McMillan, AJ Brown, and Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice is the big one, honestly, that I kind of want to highlight here. But based on those guys that he's priced around, honestly, personally, I think it's pretty merited at the moment. I would err more on the side of hold than sell. I think a lot of people are trying to get kind of cute with Igbuka and trying to sell off of Igbuka before Mike Evans comes back healthy, and then it gets really crowded there. When in reality, I think the most talented, youngest, freshest wide receiver is probably just going to continue to produce. And does he have the high floor production capabilities that some guys in other offenses have, like Rome Odunze? Well, no, not necessarily. That's why Rome Odunze is ranked much higher than someone like Igbuka, and it's not as crowded in that offense. I will say with Igbuka, like, am I a little bit worried that Mike Evans is going to be back and then you're going to have all these guys in full swing at the same time? Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about his floor. In terms of his ceiling, I'm not worried about it at all. I mean, it's just going to make it an absolute nightmare for any defense, any secondary going up against these guys every single week when they're at full strength and fully healthy. And if you're going to be worried about anyone in that offense, why not be worried about the guys who've historically shown that they get banged up every year for a good chunk of time? And again, this is counting on, even though we have Chris Godwin listed as a buy, and we had him in the buys video this week, like, that is being a little bit risky bisky, because that's kind of just assuming that he's going to come back and be even like 80% of what he was last year, pre-injury. And that was a pretty significant one. So hopefully he can bounce back and be a consistent slot receiver there. But I do think he and Igbuka are more complementary than we initially expected, like heading into the season. Whereas like Igbuka seems to be a lot more versatile than we ever expected, like lining up on the outside, being a big play threat. And now, honestly, I'm a little more worried about Mike Evans. So I would err on the side of holding Emeka Egbuka. I don't know if I would buy him, but I mean, if you can get him for a decent price once Evans is trending towards coming back pretty soon from a league mate who's trying to get out early and get cute with Egbuka, like I would hold him.
Okay, so let's talk about Chuba Hubbard now. By the way, with our rest of season rankings that we're referencing in this video, you can get them for free at the link in the pinned comment. Just create an account with code DOMAIN and they're free. You can also plug your team in our My Teams tool for free. You get a trade calculator free as well. It's the best trade calculator that you'll use as you're making moves. And so if you want to check out those free tools, again, check out the link that I've got penned, and you just create a free account and you can use them for free. So did I mention they were free? Chuba Hubbard. Look, Chuba, after weeks 1 and 2, 17 and 18 points. Since the touchdowns haven't started coming, he's been about 6 to 7 points below where that was, 9.6 and 9.9 points against Atlanta and New England. And now, really the thing with Chuba Hubbard, contextually, you have to understand that the Panthers did lose a couple of offensive linemen, and so that probably did hurt Chuba Hubbard a fair amount. But also, Chuba Hubbard hurt Chuba Hubbard a little bit because Chuba Hubbard had a calf injury. He was questionable coming into the week. He didn't end up playing on a snap limitation necessarily, but you just saw Rico Dowdle get more snaps this week. And so it was 35 to 27 in favor of Chuba. The carries were 10 to 9. The targets were 3 to 1. And so while it's Chuba like barely right now as the lead running back there. And I guess my thought is I think part of this is because of Chuba's injury. I think that, I think there is a chance in some of these games where they actually can compete. For example, their next game against Miami, the next game against Dallas after that, potentially. They have the Jets in week 7. These next 3 weeks, if Chuba Hubbard is feeling better, I do think you could see him return to getting 15 to 20 carries a game. He continues to get at least 3 targets a game, which is nice for his floor. He had 5 points in the receiving game from this week. The problem was he only had 5 points on the ground as well and then didn't score a touchdown. But realistically, what you're seeing right now over the last couple of weeks, what you're seeing showcased is Chuba Hubbard's floor. And that's kind of a lot of fantasy football in season and evaluating whether you should buy or sell a player is just finding out what's their floor and what's their ceiling. Well, we're witnessing a floor for a player that, sure, he's not going to have the upside of Josh Jacobs, of a Derrick Henry, of an Amari Hampton. But the fact of the matter is, when you're talking about where he's ranked, like expert consensus on the Flock site, let's just put this into perspective here. When you're talking about where he's ranked for everybody right now, he's around Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker, Trey Benson. So, and then when you're putting him, in again against all positions, he's going at the end of the fourth, which is where he was pretty much going in fantasy football drafts. I don't think that this isn't something that we haven't seen from Chuba Hubbard before either. Chuba had a great stretch last year, but do keep in mind, there were games last year, week 7 and 8, where he had 11 and 9 points. There was a week in week 13 where he only had 2 points. A week in week 15 when he had 9 points, for example. And in that game where he had 9 points, he had 4 receptions for 17 yards, but only had 32 yards on the ground with no touchdowns. That's why he scored 9 points. And so this is kind of what Chuba does. What you have Chuba for these 32-point games against Arizona, where he scores 2 touchdowns and has 5 receptions. In Week 14 last year against Philadelphia, where he plays and he has 26 snaps or 26 carries and rushes for 92 yards and a touchdown. And a lot of people are going to make the argument that Rico Dowdle is not going to allow him to do that. I tend to disagree. I do think Rico Dowdle is a threat. Here's the thing: I'm not buying Chuba. At first, I was like, yeah, maybe I'll buy Chuba. I think Chuba's a hold. What I'm trying to get at is I think Chuba is a hold because I don't think if you sell him, you're going to get anything worth. I mean, realistically, I guess if you could sell Chuba Hubbard and get some of the other, if you can get even a little bit above that range, I don't know. Alvin Kamara has plenty of questions. He's going through the same thing. So is Brees. Kenneth Walker has plenty of questions. Travis Etienne, maybe underranked at this point, but I think he's probably the safe side of those guys. Javonte Williams has been fine. Trey Benson has questions.
Javonte's been great.
He
had another 20-pointer.
Did he have another one last night?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I would probably move him for Javonte. I'd probably move him for Cam Scadaboo, but it's a mixed bag in terms of the guys that are going around Chuba Hubbard. If I would move Chuba Hubbard for those guys, so I guess it just depends. I lean hold. I think this is what you drafted Chuba. Right now the running back landscape is pretty ugly. You have a lot of teams that if you didn't draft running back well, you're struggling to find guys to start even.
Yeah.
Chuba's fine.
At price, he's been a bit of a disappointment where you drafted him. But again, where his price point is now at this point in the season, you're probably just leaning hold because he does, I think, have higher upside than any of the guys that, again, you mentioned because they're all, without a question, a tier above him at this point.
He's a running back 14 on this season. That's where he was drafted. So I think he's been fine. Obviously, the lack of touchdowns has sucked. And
people are freaking about Dowdle.
And part of that, I know that's why people are freaking. But what I'm saying is that's actually not even the reason to freak. Because he's done this even without Dowdle. And so he's a hold for me. If you can get some of the guys I mentioned, maybe you sell them. But I lean hold for Chuba.
Yeah, I would lean hold for Chuba as well. Marvin Harrison Jr. might be a different conversation here. After I did a little training session with Marv, taught him how to catch, he decided that he did remember how to catch halfway through the game. On Thursday night last week. Ended up with 18 points, 10 targets, which was a good step up from what you saw in the first few weeks of this season, and was pretty efficient with that usage as well. 6 catches, 66 yards, and a TUD. So he had some nice contested catch opportunities, had some nice sideline catches over corners. He looked like the Marv that we know is in there at least. But I will say with matchups against Tennessee, Indy, and Green Bay over the next few weeks, I personally am leaning soft sell on Marvin Harrison. Mm-hmm. I don't think that this production is consistent. There's a reason that he's only scoring 18-ish plus points whenever he gets a touchdown. And when he's not getting that, he is kind of dependent on those big plays. When he scores those touchdowns, they're usually bigger play touchdowns where he's getting a lot of yardage on top of that score, because that's kind of the type of receiver that he plays in that offense. And to be completely honest, I don't trust Kyler's decision-making. Marv is in his own head right now. And I do think I think he'll be able to shake it off at some point, but during this stretch against Tennessee, Indy, and Green Bay, I don't know if I trust it, honestly. It gets a lot better after that bye week in week 8 where they have Dallas, Seattle, San Fran, Jacksonville, and Tampa. But, in the short run, I don't think it's going to be any more consistent than what we've gotten used to seeing with Marv over the last dang near year and a half.
I think with Marv, I definitely am not buying him is the thing. A lot of people are going to take that performance and be like, okay, Marv's back. He's definitely not necessarily back. The thing is that the question you have to ask yourself with Marvin Harrison Jr. is, do you trust Kyler? Do you trust the situation? No, I don't. I don't trust either of those things. Do you trust Marv? I'm going to be trusting Marv again. I think Marv is going to be fine. I think Marv as a talent is fine. But realistically, that offense is not going to be super high-powered. It's always going to go through Trey McBride. They obviously lost James Conner there, but for Marv, it really just, a lot of people really moved him down their rankings. And so it just depends on where you can get. Marv is, from a wide receiver ranking standpoint right now on the site, he's being ranked next to guys like he is sandwiched between George Pickens and Quentin Johnston. Cortland Sutton and Tyreek Hill, Brian Thomas are right ahead of him. Debo Samuel, Ricky Pearsall, Chris Olave. I mean, you have to admit, Marv has more upside than all of those guys for the most part.
Yes.
So outside of course, Quentin Johnston, who is a beast. But with Marv, I do lean soft sell as well because I think if you can get any of the guys above him in the rankings, I would do it. If you can sell off Marv for even AJ Brown, I would still do, to be honest with you. Rashee Rice is a slam dunk. Zay Flowers, I would take for sure. Cortland Sutton, George Pickens, I think are pretty close at this point. And Emeka Ibuka, I would do. Ted McMillan, I would do. And so those guys, I think if you can get them for Marvin Harrison Jr., you do it. But, if you believe in Marv and you want to hold, I'm totally cool with that. I personally would have a hard time selling him for anything less than a very, very good return. And that's kind of where I'm at with him at the moment. Jordan Mason, a lot of people, this is 2 weeks in a row with our rest of season rankings. Oh, Jordan Mason is too low. Well, the first week it looked really bad because he had 23.5 points, but he had 2 touchdowns against Cincinnati. We're he's not going to have 2 touchdowns every week. And lo and behold, this guy gets the same amount of carries that he's gotten in 3 of his first 4 weeks, and he scores 10 points this week because he didn't find the end zone. And that's just what's going to happen with Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason's great. Jordan Mason is a running back 2, a mid running back 2 for fantasy football. But we can't rank him any higher than that because this is just what he's going to be. And so, right now, the expert consensus has him at running back 25 rest of the season, just for reference. For my rankings, for example, I have him at running back 23. I'm actually higher than consensus on Jordan Mason. And I like Jordan Mason plenty. But, you have, I think, what technically does the bye week count as IR? It does, right? And so Aaron Jones can come back after the bye week. So you have one more week of Jordan Mason being the lead back, and I think Aaron Jones is eligible to come back after week 6 in week 7 against Philadelphia because that will have been his 4 weeks. Yeah. And I'm not saying that Aaron Jones is going to totally vulture what Jordan Mason's doing here. I do think he's going to have high upside, touchdown games every once in a while, but 8 and 5 points in the first 2 weeks of the season. And by the way, in week 1 against Chicago, he had 15 points even with Aaron Jones on the field. I don't think it necessarily matters. What you're seeing, these last couple weeks is him have some more targets. He had 3 targets, 3 catches for 15 yards, so that's 4.5 points that he got from receiving in this game against Pittsburgh. I mean, he plays Cleveland next week. He has a bye, and then Aaron Jones is back. So Jordan Mason, I mean, here's what I'm learning from your sentiment on Jordan Mason. And I may be totally off base. I think where I have him ranked, where the experts have him ranked on the site, I think it's very appropriate. A low-end running back 2 is appropriate for Jordan Mason. But with people's reaction about Jordan Mason, consistently that we're too low on him. When in reality, I mean, Jordan Mason is what he is. He's the running back 22 in the season right now. I think the community as a whole, the fantasy football community, might be too high on Jordan Mason. I don't know where it's coming from, but I'm definitely getting those vibes every time we say anything about him. And so I'm here to further piss you off, I guess, because I'm going to say he's a soft sell right now. Again, the Cleveland bye week and then Aaron Jones backstretch is not great.
No, it's not good at all.
It's not great.
I would cash out now.
I would personally be cashing out now. And some of the running backs I just talked about are still in that same range. You've got Travion Henderson on his way up. Cam Scatterby is ranked right next to him on the site.
I feel more secure with David Montgomery for the rest of the season than I do with Mason.
When you're looking
at the larger body of work.
I also do.
So.
Trey Benson, Javonte Williams, Chuba Hubbard, even
Jalen Warren.
These are all guys that I think if you can get for Jordan Mason, I would do it. And Jordan Mason's great, and he's a good running back, and he's going to have boom games like you saw in week 3. But he's also going to have games where he has 10 points, and when Aaron Jones comes back, he's also going to have games where he has 5 points. And realistically, I think everybody as a whole, we said this during pre-draft, that we thought, when it was draft season, that everybody was drafting Jordan Mason too high. And so our opinion on Jordan Mason hasn't really changed. As the situation has changed, we'd have to adjust our rest of season rankings, but we've adjusted them with other people to kind of compare our rankings to, and we seem like we're being reasonable, and everybody's still saying we're too low on Jordan Mason. That just tells me his price is too high. So I think I'm going to put him as a soft sell.
Yeah, I'm going to go soft sell with you there as well. Let's talk about one of the wide receivers in that offense, though. And it's not Justin Jefferson. It is Jordan Addison, though, who's back from the suspension, and he had a nice splash in his first week back from that suspension. Granted, a good chunk of that production came, like a large chunk of that production came from one 80-yard play where he almost took it to the house at the end of the game in garbage time when they were trying to come back with Carson Wentz. He had 8 targets, 4 receptions for 114 yards. This was a classic Jordan Addison day, not necessarily super high percentage completion opportunities for a guy like Addison. You kind of know what role he plays in that offense. He's going to have some really good games. He's going to have some really poor games. And I do think you kind of see like a little bit of a direct correlation between what Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson are able to do consistently and who's actually throwing the ball there, what the passing volume is there. Carson Wentz threw the ball 46 times against Pittsburgh in week 4. I don't think it's a coincidence that Justin Jefferson and Addison both combined for like dang near 40 points. You need a lot of passing volume if you want these guys to produce. Oh, and by the way, for Hawkinson to get respectable volume and for Xavier Scott to freaking vulture receiving touchdowns in that game. It took a lot for Addison to even get this opportunity. And I think you're going to see a lot of people get really excited because he is back and schematically he does help out that offense. I think he helps out Jefferson schematically quite a bit. And I would go out there and say, yeah, like Jordan Addison is going to have some other big days. He's going to have some nice ones. That's kind of just the nature of his position and his skill set. When you're looking at the expert rankings right now, he's wide receiver 39 by Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin, Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, and Matthew Golden. He will probably be on the way up over the next couple of days as these get updated. But personally, I would much rather have a Chris Godwin over Jordan Addison in an offense where I know they're going to pass the ball 35 plus times a game. I don't know if that's going to be the case in Minnesota for the rest of the season because J.J. McCarthy looks like a deer caught in headlights. They're going to have to hold his hand for the rest of the year when he's back healthy because Carson Wentz will not be playing once McCarthy is back healthy. I mean, this is the full Carson Wentz experience the last couple of weeks. He has some really good plays and he has some of the most boneheaded plays of all time. He's a backup there, and he's not the answer. If they want to be successful long-term this season, they're going to have to keep trying with McCarthy. And I think that's a big oof for everyone not named JJ in that offense. And you've even seen JJ take kind of a ceiling hit with his production with that kind of lack of volume. He only scored 22 points with 46 passing attempts from Wentz yesterday. So with that in mind, I'm also going to lean soft sell with Jordan Addison. There are a bunch of wide receiver 2s in this range that I trust a lot more than Addison on a consistent basis that are just in better situations from a passing volume perspective. That admittedly, like I didn't expect. Like I didn't expect Michael Pittman to get as much opportunity as he is right now. I'd rather have Michael Pittman. I didn't expect Chris Godwin to come back and get 10 targets healthy, or once he was healthy, and he has. And yeah, Mike Evans is going to come back. I'm willing to take the gamble on Godwin and see if he can like outproduce Addison consistently. So that's where I'm at with Addison right now. I would assume you're leaning soft sell with him as well.
Yeah, I mean, we aren't. It also is dependent on the quarterback situation there. Like, yeah. I mean, they literally, J.J. McCarthy was like, you know what, my ankle's kind of, and they're like, oh, get out, you're out for 4 weeks. Okay, we're going to maybe put you on IR. I don't know. They were so freaking quick to get him out of the game and to get him on the bench. Like they saw and they had seen enough. And
they honestly, they have Cleveland and then a bye and then Philly the next 2 weeks as well. So
it's tough.
Yeah.
Addison's
really,
tough.
really difficult.
Addison's tough. I have bet against Addison multiple times in his career, and every time he's made me look stupid. And so for that reason alone,
he makes you look really smart for a few weeks, and then really stupid, and then really smart, and then really stupid.
Which is just what the Addison experience is.
He's a JMO.
I think I'm gonna say hold, man. I'm not high on him. Here's the thing: if you can soft sell him high after this Pittsburgh game, sure. I don't think there are a ton of people overreacting to what they saw from Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison still is ranked next to DJ Moore, Matthew Golden, Travis Hunter, Juwan Jennings in the rest of season expert ranking. Like, I mean, you got to admit, Jordan Addison's probably a better player to own than those guys at this point. And so I'm going to say hold. It just is going to depend on how your league mates react to this. Let's talk about the tight end one in fantasy football right now, Jake Ferguson. I love talking about this. And this is an easy one for me. If you have Jake Ferguson on your fantasy football team, you hold him. Jake Ferguson, from a price to return perspective, is a guy that will win you the league at the tight end position. And I don't think it's going to be slowing down anytime soon. He had 6 targets in week 1, 12 in week 2, 14 in week 3, and then 7 against Green Bay. Had the touchdown, ends up scoring 17 points. I mean, my gosh. I have Jake Ferguson rest of the season ranked above my own tight end, Sam Laporta. I have him ranked as my tight end 5, only behind Kraft, Warren, McBride, and Bowers. And when you're looking at the expert average, I mean, that's where they have Kittle ahead of Ferguson, and that's it. And I think that's even a stretch. with Ferguson, the passing volume is going to be there, and that is the most important thing. And we've seen Jake Ferguson. Last time Dak was healthy, Jake Ferguson was the tight end 9 on the year. And they just paid Jake Ferguson big money in the offseason as well. So they're very invested. They like him. You're also talking about CeeDee Lamb potentially being hobbled, but he was doing this with CeeDee Lamb on the field is the thing that I want to point out. He scored his first touchdown of the year against Green Bay, and he's the tight end 1. 39th overall player in fantasy football right now. And Dak Prescott, when you're looking at his passing volume, 34, 52, 40, and 40 passing attempts in the first 4 weeks. And those targets have to go to somebody. And I understand CD soaks up a lot of those targets when he's back. But again, Jake Ferguson was doing this with CeeDee Lamb on the field. And so I don't think this is going to stop. In my opinion, you drafted somebody that could end up winning you the league. You drafted somebody that's now giving you a positional advantage at a onesie position where you probably punted onesie and went Jake Ferguson late in drafts. You hold Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson's a hold. I'm not trading Jake Ferguson for Laporta. I'm not trading him for Kittle at this point. As much as I love Kittle, if you're 4-0, maybe you can do that. If you're 4-0, you can do that. But if you're not, you can't. For Kraft, I would probably do that, but Kraft, Warren, and Laporte and Ferguson, in my opinion, are all in the same tier. And so, look, I will gladly take a piece of this high volume passing offense and a tight end they just paid a bunch of money to, who is consistently getting 7 or more targets every game for the first 4 weeks of the year. Sign me up. I'm holding him.
I would hold even soft buy. With the passing volume that you're seeing in this offense, we should have seen this coming. 34, 52, 40, and 40 pass attempts from Dak Prescott first 4 weeks of the season. Get used to this being a trend for the rest of the year for the Dallas Cowboys, folks. The only way they have a chance at winning games is if they score a butt ton of points every single week, because their defense is straight trash. It is one of the worst defenses in the NFL. They are in complete shambles right now. You saw George Pickens have a really good day. You've seen Jake Ferguson have multiple good days this season. I'm with you there. If you can get Ferguson for even a slight discount right now, because people are worried about once CD comes back healthy, I've heard that be an argument about why Ferguson might be a sell. That's something that honestly at this point I don't even care with this passing volume. If he's going to throw it 40 plus times a game, which at this point I would happily bet on for the rest of the season, we're going to be looking at multiple productive assets in that offense on a weekly basis. So our last guy here is going to be an old fart who's had a really, really nice start to the year, but he kind of slowed down against the New York Giants this week. He still had 7 targets for 5 receptions, but he didn't haul in a touchdown, which is what results in him kind of having a disappointing 8-pointer, and that was Keenan Allen. So with Keenan Allen at this point, you're looking at what Quentin Johnson has been able to do consistently over any other wide receiver in that offense, being the leading target there. Essentially, from a production perspective, he is the wide receiver 1 there, and he looks phenomenal. Ladd McConkey, we don't know where he is right now. Keenan Allen's kind of the guy stuck in between because he was a big surprise. QJ has been the biggest surprise, and he's kind of taken a lot of the attention off of a guy like Keenan Allen, who's been a really, really nice asset that you added if you decided to invest in him in the last round of your fantasy draft or got him for really cheap on waivers. But after a game against the Giants where you saw this offense kind of come back down to earth in terms of the receivers and what they were able to do, because Ladd and Keenan didn't do much, and QJ is the one that popped off, and Hampton is popping off. Right now, he's being priced kind of around the same range that I was talking about with Jordan Addison, where he is basically right there by a Michael Pittman. He's right there by Mike Evans, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore. I'm not going to lie. I would probably take every single one of those receivers, maybe with the exception of DJ Moore, over Keenan Allen right now. I'm not going to say sell Keenan Allen after he had a slow day, because I think he's going to have other good days. He gets a lot of good red zone targets. This was a tough week for the Chargers after Joe Alt went down with that injury. Luckily, Joe Alt just had an ankle sprain, I believe. There was no structural damage. So he should be back after a week or two. And that's a really good sign when you're talking about pass pro for Justin Herbert, which I honestly think was a big reason why Keenan had a slower day. So I'm going to lead a hold with Keenan Allen right now. I don't think I'm going to panic and say clock struck 12 with him and he's going to turn back to an old fart and not do anything for the rest of the year and be irrelevant. I think he'll be a nice flex option for you, just not as consistent as a guy like QJ for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'm going to go hold with Keenan Allen as well. I mean, with this Chargers offense, I just like having pieces of this offense. And, you know, they're going to have a little bit of trouble, I think, getting the running game going, even though Amari Hampton's still going to be able to produce in fantasy football. This is because he's so good at maintaining contact balance. He's so good at breaking tackles and things like that. He's a big guy. He's a physical runner. That's going to work to his advantage playing behind this offensive line that I think is going to have to pass the ball a lot. And you're looking at Herbert last game, 41 passing attempts for Justin Herbert in week 4. He continues to throw the ball at a very high rate. And so I'll just go hold. He's a consistent flex option, somebody you keep. You drafted him really cheap, and you can plug him in and start any week you want to. And so there you go. Hopefully these verdicts help you and you can make these moves in your fantasy football leagues. If you'd like to check out our free tools, got the free trade calculator, free rankings, the My Team tool, you can plug your team in on the site. I've got it linked down below. You can check out all these tools for free again when you create an account with code DOMAIN. So go check all that out and use it for your fantasy football leagues. But I hope you guys are at this point 4-0. We appreciate you guys for watching. Thank you so much, and we'll see you later.